we'll dive into the next topic of this stage, which is dual use, which is probably a bit sensitive for many of us, but it's a trend and it's a real thing that we need to talk about. And we will have a panel discussion on this. And I'm really excited to hear all the insights and what's actually really going on in the discussions. So welcome with me on stage Jan from Capgemini, who will be moderating this discussion. Robert from Bosch in Murrhardt, it's a special location. He will talk about that. And Maurice Sebastian from DXC Technologies. DXC Technology, apologies. Welcome on stage.
Okay, you can hear me, I guess. First of all, thank you very much for joining this panel. And actually, I have bad news for you. We will not cover the whole dual-use universe in just 15 minutes. Instead, we concentrate on just one question. How can we kind of transfer automotive excellence to really deployable and resilient military capability, because that's the key here. Well, if we look at this from the automotive perspective, we know that automotive can scale. You can produce at quality and so on and so on, and it's more and more, it's becoming a software-driven business. In defense, however, we do need scale. We do need quality of production, and it's also more becoming software-driven. However, we have to see reality on the battlefield. We talk about mission assurance. We talk about hardening. We talk about confidentiality. We talk about NATO interoperability and so on. So non-functionals, no one really likes. And in this panel, we look at this from basically 3 layers. The basement, the industry layer, can we build and scale? Second, the mission layer, can we make it mission ready? Can it survive on a battlefield? And finally, the resilience layer, and this is new to us in defense, can it adapt under pressure and at speed? And I'm very happy to have our panelists here. First of all, we have Robert Groß from Bosch Murrhardt. And I have to look it up what you have given me as your intro. He brings the industrialization perspective. So specialized, small, serious production, flexible production networks. And finally, he works as an industrialization partner for ramp-up, for startups, and so on. So this is for the industrialization side. On the software side, we have Maurice Sebastian from DXC Technologies here, and he brings a software and compute platform to us. So he will talk about middleware, operating platforms, and so on. And he will talk about also a little bit, what does it take to bring the software-defined vehicle perspective to dual use and to defense. Okay, so welcome you guys on stage. And we just dive into the first topic, industrialization. So Robert, from your perspective as a small, serious industrialization specialist, what is it, what's the capability that you can bring into defense?
So thank you very much, Jan. As you already mentioned, we are not Bosch Feuerbach or Bosch Reutlingen, so these huge plants with thousands of workers. So we are a small plant with some 100 workers only, and we are specialists in complex parts, complex manufacturing, assembly and parts manufacturing, and that is exactly our value proposition to the customer, that you can come to us from the idea to the final product, and we will make everything for you, from purchasing, the whole supply chain, engineering. We support with engineering, but the core is manufacturing and assembly, and also the worldwide shipping. And our comfort zone is hundreds or thousands of pieces. So not as the big plants, millions of pieces, thousands of pieces. And that's exactly, if you look at the wish list of the defense primes, that's exactly the quantities what they have today. So where we say, okay, this is something where it could resonate, where we could offer a certain scalability and the excellence of the automotive industry. But that's why where we also comes with startups into place, but with the flexibility of the German Mittelstand, because we are a small company in the big company.
So actually, this is what I learned from Robert in simple words. Defense mass production is small scale for you. So let's look at the software side. When we say small scale production and so on, what does the software side need to contribute to keep those systems up to date, that they stay relevant actually?
Yeah, that's a good question. First of all, I would even challenge this question a little bit by saying software is not just contributing. It's not just a contributor anymore in a software-driven or software-defined innovation. It's more or less the key driver of the whole thing. Where you had hardware, electronics, mechanics before, you now have software which defines the functional view of the world. So that's a basic paradigm shift that we are seeing and that we need to transfer from the SDV, from the software-defined vehicle domain to other domains like the defense. From a technological point of view, we are seeing different trends or different pillars, as we typically call it, to make that finally and effectively happen. One thing that we need to do, and that has been ignored in the automotive industry for a while, for a long time as well, is we need to separate between hardware and software. So we need to make our software development agnostic from the hardware. Then you can do a real software-driven development, you can update your software, update your function. We need to unify our software in a certain extent. That's the second pillar. Yeah, so we need to define the right interfaces, the right platform stacks, middleware, operating systems, etc., to have a common view onto the software. And third, we need to decouple then also the life cycle of hardware and software. Yeah, while you do that typically hand in hand with hardware, software co-design, in the software-defined vehicle world, you have to decouple that and have your life cycle for the hardware decoupled from the software life cycle.
Okay, thank you, Maurice. So in simple words, while industrialization gives us scale, software gives us the adaptability that we urgently need. Okay, guys, this was your comfort zone. Let's move out of that. So it's nice that we have industrialization, right? And it's nice that we have a software-driven capability. However, that does not make us mission ready. So let's talk about certification, let's talk about sovereignty, let's talk about interoperability, and so on. So, Maurice, how do you cope with these challenges? Or in other words, where does the automotive software logic break when we go to defense?
The simple answer here is, I would say, it breaks everywhere where we have automotive-specific processes, right? The first question was more or less addressing this challenge from a technical perspective, and I see a big overlap, a huge overlap between the defense and the automotive and also other industries when it comes to software-driven innovation. But we have we have many automotive-specific aspects in our development processes where we need the right transfer into the defense world at the end. Examples are safety and security. So we have safety and security in both worlds, but I think they differ significantly, right? What you see, if you have a car, you have to have a certain safety in place that prevents the car from crashing. Otherwise, of course, you have a certain number of facilities. It's not the same as when a defense system is misbehaving or behaving in an unintended way. Same for security. So I think that's maybe the main or the major part that we need to look at. Another one, also very important one, because the automotive industry was ignoring that for a while as well. We need to consider the entire environment. And the environment differs in the defense world compared to the automotive world. The automotive car is more or less a self-sufficient unit, while a defense system is way bigger. Yeah, it has an entire battlefield scenario, so you need to incorporate that in your software view to come up with efficient solutions.
Okay, so that sounds a little bit more challenging. So what I understood is that it's not a technical problem of the software itself, It's more the challenge to prove that an ever-changing system is not misbehaving or secure. So that brings us actually to the industrialization side again. So if software requires faster cycles, and on the other hand, we see on a battlefield, hardware is really old. So tanks are about 40 to 50 years old. So how can we deal with this gap on the industrialization side of things, Robert?
I think that's a very easy and very difficult question at the same time, because I think acting and doing something according to specs, you know, so if some company like, I don't know, Rheinmetall or somebody would come and would say, look, I need a part for an old tank. I think that is for a car manufacturer or for an industry company not too difficult. You have to build something according to spec. That's not a big problem. The problem only starts there because the car manufacturers are good at that. Sometimes you just have to go maybe to a different department, because if you go to your colleagues who make oldtimer parts, they have this exact challenge the whole day. That somebody comes to you and say, okay, this is a very old part, it's still in the market, it's a very old vintage car. Can you rebuild it? Yes, we can. So that's not the problem. The challenge starts when you have to discuss together with a prime, so with somebody like Rheinmetall, because we cannot certify it in the market. So we cannot bring this product in the market and then say, look, now it works for tanks. So we can only give it to the prime, and then he has to certify with the Bundeswehr or something the whole system. So at the end of the day, I would say that's not a technical challenge, it's a challenge of how to work together.
So, in other words, it could be actually kind of a lifetime extender, what you're doing, right?
Absolutely, yes.
Provided that someone else does the integration piece. Yeah?
Absolutely.
Okay. So now we have come to a point where we have the automotive industry or automotive excellence on the battlefield. Okay, so far so good. We are mission ready. However, now comes the real challenge. Mission assurance makes us slow. That's the bad news. Certification, security, hardening, and so on does not speed up the process. However, if you look at current warfare, adaptation on the battlefield is key and needs to be speed up. So question is actually, how can we actually deal with this contradiction? And so how can we build a product that's really resilient in terms of military? So many people think about product resilience then, right, Robert? But I'm afraid there's even more to it, isn't it?
Exactly. So actually, for me, it was, let's say, a surprising event when we discussed about what exactly is in the media, that at some point, maybe we are in a war. Hopefully not. And at that point, with a very important colleague of mine, I discussed the situation that, yeah, well, we joked, maybe we see each other on the battlefield. And he said, no, we won't, because I will be in the THW. And then something started to click. So wait a moment. One thing about resilience, there are several things. Of course, you need to have an independent production under stress. Yes, so you need maybe work time flexibility. You need flexible lines, flexible employees, a little bit of energy. So our oil tank, for example, is full in a sense when we lose external electricity, that at least we can operate and ship the products and organize the shutdown. But on the other hand, you need the employees. And I would recommend to everybody of you, just look at the top 10% of your employees and ask them the question, are you in the THW? Are you in the Feuerwehr, so the fire department, or maybe are you even in the Reserve as a soldier? And in the top 10% of the employees, I will bet with you that a surprisingly high number, because these are the intrinsic motivated, are in exactly these. And in a catastrophe situation, these are gone, because they are either in the military, in the THW, or in the fire department. So what do you do when you're missing exactly these critical employees? And I would say resilience is also to let your plant operate under this stress. And you need to have answers, you need to find answers, they are not easy. And I cannot say we are there, we are just starting to put the right question into that.
Yeah, so I think we learned that resilience starts way before the product, right? But let's move to the product itself, a resilient or really resilient product that's capable to be adapted under stress. That brings us to the software side again, Maurice. So what is it exactly how could this challenge be solved? Mission assurance versus adaptation at speed under fire.
So when you look at a system, you typically don't have a standalone embedded unit, right? Where you have your software running on the unit only. You typically have a system that consists of an embedded part, of an edge part, and of a cloud part. And we mentioned this battlefield scenario already for defense applications, where huge parts come from the cloud, from external sensors, external data fed into the system under consideration. So this mixture of different systems need to be balanced in the right way. That means you have to be able to cope with failures of specific parts of the system, like, for example, a connectivity system problem of the cloud within your embedded system at the end by itself. And an example here is what we typically do in automotive, autonomous drive, which is a highly safety critical system, which relies on external data, which relies on high performance computers inside the car, which might also not be 100% reliable and resilient. And in that case, you always have to ensure that you have some sort of degraded operation mode. So degraded operation mode is key to ensuring resilience and reliability. It's not easy, of course, because, I mean, look at automotive. What you typically do in automotive when your autonomous drive system fails, you have a degradation mode that parks the car, that drives the car to the right side of the street, and it stands. It's safe. Imagine that happens on a battlefield. That's not necessarily good, right? If the tank just stops. Could be a risk for the team in there as well. So you have to come up with other degradation modes, other models. That's a tricky part of the transfer at the end, right? But degradation is key here to ensuring reliability, resilience, and that need to be ensured throughout the entire system design. It's not a one shot in a specific phase. You have standards which all along the V model, all along the development process, ensure that this reliable mode is really maintained and implemented in the system.
Okay, so we see the problem is quite complex, and it's not about cloud versus edge, it's about synchronization between connected, degraded, and even disconnected nodes. So as far as the resilience is concerned, we actually look at two sides of a problem, right? One is the production resilience, so being able to keep a production under stress, and the second is the product resilience, that the product itself can adapt or it can survive on the battlefield in a so-called DDIL environment. So that friction between mission assurance and the adaptability, I think you guys quite left that out a bit, but I agree that it's not solved already. So we have no silver bullet to solve that mission assurance versus a speedy adaptability problem. No way. So that brings us to the end of our panel, I'm afraid. So one sentence each, please. What is it from your point of view that we need to build in order to transfer the automotive excellence to the battlefield? Robert, you might first.
Thank you. So from hardware side, I would say, in my perspective, the ingredients are there. So the potential is there, but, and I see some companies, because I'm looking at the Scheffler colleague, who are already making significant progress. We are there, so we're going into the right direction, but we need to work more closely together. So we need to put a lot of more effort and maybe also on a higher level to it. So over company.
I will put it in one sentence, and then I explain the sentence, right? So the sentence would be build a software organization. And that sounds very trivial, but it's exactly where the automotive industry failed or was struggling for a long time. Building a software organization does not simply mean you build up departments and you nominate or you staff it with people. You have to build up the right mindset. You have to build up the right culture, and you have to become a real software company instead of a typical classical car, defense, or whatever company. And if we look at the companies which we are always referring to when it comes to the real software-defined vehicle, those are typically US-based companies from California, they are software companies. They started with a software perspective, software mindset, not with a mechanical one. And that's what I mean with build a software company, start with that angle, and then the chances for success are increasing significantly.
Okay, so thank you, Maurice. We definitely should define the semantics of the number one again, but that's all right. My three takeaways from that panel are on the industrial level, we just need to put the pieces together, right? The scale is needed and the right amount of scale is there. We just need to put it together. On the software side, the software creates adaptability. That's great. But still we have to cope with the hardware boundaries like power, like space, and so on. There's not so much of that in a tank, definitely not. And finally, the mission assurance versus adaptability problem still remains. So when we look at our three layers, industry, mission, and resilience layer, I don't think it's another component that's needed. It's just about, let's say, the architecture that's needed to glue all that together in order to bring automotive excellence to the battlefield in a sovereign way. Thank you very much. Thank you, Robert. Thank you, Maurice.
Thank you, Jan.
Thanks, Jan.